So, this is an update for the CalCat other channel, the On Location Cat channel. Browsing the interwebs looking for other Fanime stuff from Saturday. So this is technically not a Fanime recap, although I guess it isn't really. Mark's Cards and I went to the AdamaCon on Saturday, and I was looking to see if anybody got a shot of the Star Trek Lower Decks guy and Mark's Cards. That being Mark's Cards. We were there, and I was the only one wearing a Star Trek Lower Decks red outfit. So if you see me there, kudos to you for getting points for that. There's a couple of guys that did a music video, and briefly, for a moment, he's in it. Yeah, CalCat's in it. So in one of the music videos, so that's cool. But yeah, neat, Saturday. So the other guy didn't have it. Also, I'm seen in the background at one point in another video, and in a third one, Mark's Cards brushes up against these two guys filming thing, and he's and they say, "Oh, I guess he doesn't want to be on film," and it's Mark's Cards, which was funny. So he's in there in that one, in that other video. So right on, cool. There's no creepypasta one this year. We got about 30 minutes of footage in hours, which is more than a lot of people got. But some people got 20 or 30 or more. Next year we'll probably have to get something better than this janky cell phone to do pictures, video. Maybe a newer cell phone or a GoPro, like a earlier model of that, or something like that, so that it can get video and pictures that just look better than that. Yeah, the cell phone is getting old too, so maybe we tried to replace the cell phones in the 2000s and didn't get around to it. So here we are on set, and there is we're on the set of the Robotech thing, which is not yet in production, but all of the toys are under there, and the sets are over there, and everything's here in this smaller studio. There just isn't like quiet time on the set yet to do filming. The space sets were pulled out of hock as well, and we're attempting to wash them, which probably will wreck them. But that's all right. So we have other stuff. It turns out that after doing AdamaCon a month ago, and then after a week later having seen the Will Wheaton stuff behind the scenes of the new Star Trek bridge, that they didn't use very much of that other set at all. They used it for was the set from the experience. They used that mainly as a test model. They used pieces of it as a test model. They used the helm and the navigation, yes, they did, part of it. But they rewired and rebuilt everything else. So even the back pieces and stuff, they kept some of that. But yeah, they had to redo all of the consoles. Because all going to be real touchscreens now, as opposed to they were kind of fake in the original. They were fake TV screens and fake gel things actually physically painted onto the set back then, because that's how you would do it in the 80s. So whenever they wanted to pull up something on the screen and have it react to them like it was a touchscreen, it was all done with a Macintosh and a background, an early touchscreen, but it was like very primitive, and they didn't expect anybody to zero in on HD and see what they were looking at, so they could put a bunch of funny names in there. So it's and the Lower Decks is going to do a crossover with Strange New Worlds, which takes place over 100 years earlier. I'm assuming time travel or holodeck, probably holodeck, from Lower Decks going to visit them. You wouldn't think they would be nostalgic for them, though, because they technically aren't nostalgic Star Trek. They're technically a newer version of Star Trek. They both are. Yeah. Still a Trek thing. But Starship Locations, this coming season, we will be doing episode where they will go to the Cillian Pine Hill in the story, so we'll have to build that. Go there. Yeah, so we'll see what happens with that. That'll be in the finale, so you have to wait for it to be in the finale. They go to Evergreen first, but it probably all looks like the same set because it's cheap. Haha! And yes, just completed a draft script of Distant Cousins, the movie, which we for years we wanted to do a Canary Space story set in the Canary Space 7-book universe. Oh, and now the thing cuts out. Now I can hear the Canary Space universe, and we got to I know it's the writer's strike right now. I'm not in the WGA, and the script was half done, so I finished it. So I know it's a writer's strike right now. But yeah, and I'm the one producing and writing and doing my own stuff. It's technically as if what they call it, the producer writer now, the head writer and producer writer. So I'm technically the head writer and the producer writer and the writing team. Whenever Mark's Card shows up as a consultant, I'm technically the whole team. So as the producer and director, I stepped in and wrote Distant Cousins, the script based on the Canary Space stories, the Adam Brown stories, and decided what would a studio do if it wrote a Canary Space novel turned one into a movie, and I thought, you know what, kind of fun to do that, and I'll go into that because that's the thing that was right now. The script way down the line, 2025 probably, but yeah, so this was a story that had been germinating for years. A story idea. There was going to be new Canary Space stories. There's going to be an 8th book apparently in 2020. Pandemic hit, kind of ruined that. 2019, 2020, and some of those elements became part of Cillian realms, the Silly Trek starship locations, because we wanted to use some of those elements, but then not. Don't put them in that or in a new Star Crackers. There's going to be a new Star Crackers, new Space Vanguards ESVS spinoff as well. And that one didn't work, so we combined them and stuck them in the Wishing Planet, and also stuck them in the Kulavito one. Stuck them in that one. The Forbidden Planet. What the hell? The planet. What was the name of that? The Planet of the Fallen Ones, episode 2. So they're in that 2 novels. Take that. This other story takes elements of that and kicks it ahead down the road 600 years. It says, we're going to go visit the time of Star Trek Discovery seasons 4 and 5. And we're going to in this story, basically. But it's not Star Trek, and it happens to be the 31st century. So yeah. In the story, it's either the 31st or 32nd, something like that. But I think it's a little earlier than Discovery, the story. But yeah, the story is set after the Canary Space and all that, because why not set it 1,000 years after the original story? Just because it makes more sense doing that, and although we got rid of all of the original print books because we needed to save some space, so all the original first printings from On Location all the way to First Press the series and Valley Stories and all that, and Distant Cousins and Planet Comet, all that. Most of them are out in the bin. So because we have digital versions of them and we have them online on Amazon, you can go and get them in that form. And the ones that we didn't put on Amazon, we don't want everybody to read. And the On Location stuff has been changed, names have been changed, so that it's not offending anybody. And it really wouldn't, but just to be sure. So things it's changed. And so the premise of this other story, like the other ones, was what would happen if we did what happened if a major studio saw Canary Space books and thought, we're going to make a movie out of your Canary Space books because they're so awesome, and we're going to make a movie out of it, and make a full-on thing, you know. Of course, a studio was never going to bank that, one of our fan films. So we're going to do it. So the idea is that the Canary Space people will probably be played by G.I. Joes, little G.I. Joe figures, like the Robotech story in this version, and the ships. So it'll be like the PlanetCom 2007 special you might have seen on the internet recently. That was re-released on the internet, on the channel, the other channel, so you could watch it. But also it was previously on DVD video and watched. It was the PlanetCom 2007. So this is a spiritual sequel to PlanetCom. So it's set over 1,000 years later. And, not just the 22nd century, but the 32nd century. Way off there in the future. After the dark ages of space. Now, if you look back at the original PlanetCom, which you can also see online, it spans the universe. It goes from the universe to the other, and it's billions of years later in the last part, and they're like out there, and they move the Earth and the Sun and rip off Arthur C. Clarke, basically. Which they did earlier with the name PlanetCom, but I didn't know at the time when I wrote it when I was a kid that I was ripping it off. I didn't know. I didn't know. I didn't know that's what PlanetCom was called in Rendezvous with Rama. It was their version of the internet, basically. But no, it's not. And ironically, there was no internet in Canary Space 1 through 7, which came out in 2016 to 2019, roughly. There was no internet in that. I just didn't feature it. They had something like subspace so they could communicate, but yeah, the internet would only be working on the Earth, right? So they could go into space. Wouldn't work on anywhere else other than on the Earth. In World Wide Web, the internet thing you're using now is all satellites on the Earth, over the Earth, and signal working, back and forth. Yeah, I mean, you figure if space aliens are going to come and visit humans, they would beam us our internet spam first and let us know where we're coming. They wouldn't beam us the first radio broadcast, like in Contact the movie. No, it would be our internet spam and possibly hentai. But yes, let's not do that. Let's get demonetized. So this story premise also is an homage to the 80s, Arthur C. Clarke, Alan Dean Foster, and also to the 2000s books, Lindsay Ellis books, the Ampersand stuff a little bit. It's definitely an homage to that, because she's doing basically Transformers fanfic that she's turned into something. Thinking she can do like 50 Shades of Grey did, take a Twilight fanfic and make it into something else. Well, she took a Transformers fanfic and made it into something else. Nothing to do with Shades of Grey, it's just that she fanfic and made something else out of it. That's the only similarity other than that. And former blogger Lindsay Ellis. There's an homage to that in there, and there's an homage to Ursula K. Le Guin and that story with the alien controlling the ship thing, stuck in the ship, and they used to control it. And that was also a Star Trek episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds did something like that as well. Of course, that's also very manga as well. Macross 2 did something like that. Eve did something like that. The video game did something like that. So yeah, the alien computer thing controlling something is an idea. I wanted to make a sci-fi story that is in the vein and the genre of, but my own kind of original fanfic of the Canary Space stories, but done on a low budget. I said, here's what I wanted to do. I wanted to have a 90-minute story, roughly 90 pages, where they encounter aliens who are from a distant past, not like Greg Bear and Sawyer and the others, where they had met Neanderthals and went back in time to meet Neanderthals, or brought them future to meet Neanderthals and Cro-Magnons and all that, but rather sort of a uplift idea, sort of kind of vague, but no, it makes sense in the story. The idea is that an ancient group of humans comes humanoids, hominids, come to Earth, responding to a signal that was sent to them from long ago at the end of the other story. And we find out through the course of the story that the people that sent the signal are actually on the ship, and they're messing with it. There's no villains per se. There is a villain scene roughly, but an antagonist character, but he's essential to the story. And there are space stoners, and they're essential to the story. And there's a sort of a pseudo commander scientist guy, but no military in it, because it's after the dark age of space, and it really isn't. It's kind of an anarchy. It's kind of young adult fiction, really. It definitely has the tone of a Canary Space story. It has. This is what happened if the studio wrote the story, so why not have me write the story I wrote? As you know, have elements of when I was in high school and junior high, and thought of stuff like Slater or Sean McKnight or Mark's Cards, John Yeager, him too, and put elements of that in there. Say like all the discussions we had in college afterward about the universe and everything, and throw in discussions about religion and faith and things like that. Throw in that. Throw in the ideas about the creation of humankind. Many stories inspired that. The idea that they dropped in Prometheus, that movie annoyed us. So we're like, we wanted to do that better. Say, what happened if an alien race actually did leave markers that led to the creation of meeting the creators of humankind, and then they actually show them, because a lot of these stories back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, well, they were written based on drugs. They like Dune, that guy was high as a kite. The Dune guy, and we're not, but we wanted to do a story where I wanted to do the space story where there was I wanted to do a space story where origin of mankind type of thing, quasi-religious thing, but actually it's not. They figure out that some of them are AI life forms, like robots and androids on the ship, and that they've been engineered that way. See, unlike Jurassic Park, where they somehow have ancient millions of years old DNA and they've rejuvenated it, I came up with a clever idea. Somebody else probably came up with it too, but I came up with it as well. Clever idea being, okay, if they had something like the Blade Runner people, the replicants, and they could replicate even reproducing life forms. Well, maybe what they did is they found a way, this alien advanced race 30,000 years ago or so, found the Neanderthals were dying out and said, okay, we're going to preserve them, like the preservers in Star Trek. Well, we're not just going to do that, we're going to preserve their DNA and their coding and all that. And then later on, the improvisers from the series, who are only from 10,000 years ago, they're more like Denisovans and Cro-Magnons, so they're a little later. And they are also advanced, and each side gets more and more advanced, and then it goes to a Type 2 civilization. Either that, or there's a dark forest in which, like Kim Stanley Robinson and like Alistair Reynolds' books, there's an alien race that's above them all that tries to snuff out any other alien races from showing up and achieving Type 2 status, because then they would be defeated by the alien race. I didn't quite do that. What I did was in the Canary Space books, 1 through 7, over there on Amazon, we had Mark's Cards, and I had the premise of saying, okay, yeah, these aliens are after something. They're human souls, or they're after something about humans or whatever, and that's why they attack them. And there's space wars. It's like an epic. It's like a Star Blazers-y, Robotech-y thing. Star Trek thing as well. It's a space adventure. Epic, though. 7 huge books. And how do you boil that down to, distill that down to just, we're going to have a nice, fun adventure for a book. It's not going to be a space battle book. It's not about the space battles. The 7-book series kind of was about the space battles and stuff. It wasn't quite military fiction like David Weber, although it was definitely inspired of that kind of idea. It was probably more Star Trek meets Star Blazers. The warrior spirit, the ship is able to defeat the bad guys because it's just a great ship, the great crew, that kind of thing. Star Trek as well, yeah. The Dominion War, Deep Space Nine, the Xindi War, the Enterprise, which should have been the Romulan War. That's what we did. But they didn't want to do that yet. They waited until season 4 and they were already too late. So what I wanted to do was have a series where they try to find out the origins of humankind. These AI creatures show up, they get this big ship, ancient ship, a la Arthur C. Clarke and the Sentinels and Rendezvous with Rama. Shows up, and but instead of having it be all existential thinking, long, boring sort of things, it's more like these charismatic aliens show up, and they start talking to this crew on Artemis Station, which Artemis Station survived. That was a clever thing we did with Space Forces and all that. They added Space Forces. Trump stole our idea, Space Force. We thought of that way back in 2015, before the election ever happened. Space Force. That was the Space Forces. Our federation in Canary Space was Space Force. It's literally what it was, Space Force. So yeah, they figured Air Force and Navy, Space Force. I guess that's what they figured. So they thought of it at the same time. So Space Force, and so there was also a comedy series about Space Force. But that wasn't us. Ours was first, as books. So, Space Forces. Yeah. And Starcrackers, or Space Vanguards, was sort of a spoof of the Space Force. Whereas those were more Mark's cards, so they were more atheist. And they were less faithful. And they were like more goofy sort of comedy kind of stuff. More edgy, more progressive, whereas the other one was less. And so this one, there was just too much to go with, so we thought, okay, boil this down to a script thing. Now watch the Steve Shives channel as him and his friend reviewed the Star Trek Picard Season 3 and said, this is how to write a story. So it was around the same time as I was putting together Season 3 of Star Trek, Starship Location Season 3. And same time. So we're all like, how do you do a storybook thing, show, don't tell, and all that? And often they say in writing, show, don't tell. But what they mean is when you describe something in a story, it's easier to show the visuals than it is to have them talking in a room for a long time. But you can have them talking into a room if they have to. Like, if you're stuck with a story where your main characters are literally confined to a spaceship and it's a bottle show, which most of this story is, they would have to be in a room talking, just encountering once in a while some alien threat or something, or some alien stuff going on, because it's basically a bottle show. So you have to, they're in space, they're doing stuff in space, they don't even land on Earth in it. And the only reason, and the clever thing is that Artemis Station is still there, the current moon base that is yet to be launched. Because it's so old, the bad guys didn't touch it. So that it still works, even though it was never mentioned in the series. And it's like the enemy bad guys, they just didn't care about it. They just flew past it. And, okay, that's just an antique, don't bother with that. So, 1,000 years later, they've got people on it that are still there. Which is, all right, that works. Space Forces, people left over from that are generations after the Space Forces, and they really don't know anything about that anymore. A lot of the records got lost during the dark age of space. The Earth was in a nuclear winter for like 100 years because of the fallout from the space wars. And this is after that. This is the YA fiction last breath of that kind of thing going on. But no, it's an uplifting story actually. It's about it's gonna be fun. The origins of mankind type of thing, but it's science fiction, so it's not really. But no one really knows. So if you had an alien group, Type 2 civilization that was capable of, well, they don't have necessarily Q-like powers. It's more like they have technology that looks to us to be magic, but that's what it is. So and we're on the same level as the base would be now, but in the future, because they just built up their technology. So their technology is once again returning to normal. So they encounter these aliens that know a lot about where humankind came from, and they're responding to a signal from space, and They have records of that because they kept them somehow in their Matryoshka brains on the planet. And it's connected to Old Man Tom Cassins from the story, and it is a direct sequel if you've seen the PlanetCom video and the longer one that I did when I was 14 to 16. You kind of know where it's going, because you get to the end and there's an old Tom Cassin shows up, and there's an old fool too, and there's another guy, and they're on an Eden planet and all that. So something like that is going to happen, but not exactly. Yeah. So that's the ideas in the script, and it's not that I want to do a fun movie, sci-fi movie story where they don't cop out. Their mission is to find out about the alien ship, find the origins of the people in it, find the origin ergo themselves through that sort of very Star Trek like idea, and find the thing. It's almost a pilot. They find the ship, they go in there, TV pilot. They almost go in there and they find the thing, and it's mine, so it's something I wrote. So I was up here like, this is gonna be kind of cool. Just a stream of consciousness thing, and also the idea that there's these two stoner characters that are just in it, and they have heightened awareness because they're high. They did that in Dune. I'm spoofing Dune a little bit there, and spoofing stoner comedies. And nothing bad happens to them. Well, something sort of bad happens to them, but nothing serious. I wanted to make a story where the responsibility that the main characters have with each other is they're not in command of something, so they've already screwed up, and so have the aliens. They've also screwed something up. But ultimately, everything will work out in the end because it does have a Disney type fun ending, yeah. And I think the only reason that they didn't like Disney's Strange World is because they're racist and homophobic. That people didn't like that. But as was pointed out in an earlier thing about that, is that that's an awful lot like when Calicat and Mark's Cards were at Disney and they were talking about, pitched, quote unquote, about a story about a prince who wants to find another prince instead of it being a princess. Which the Disney guy then said, well, it's too soon for that. We don't want to go there yet. Someday, but not now. Strange World has a prince kind of character, a royalty in that town. He's a prince, kind of. And he's like, because he saved the town in the story, and he wants to, he has a boyfriend. And they're okay with it. The whole town's okay with it. No, he's a boyfriend. Kid has a boyfriend. The father guy, the king, wants to go on an adventure to find his father, and the boy wants to find return to his prince. So there it is. There's a story. 8 years it took them to come up with something like that. But yeah, that's cool. That's not the problem with the movie. The problem with the movie was the editing of Strange World. It just didn't, and it's not like Star Trek. Why Starship Location, Strange Worlds? That's kind of a similar plot, similar title. Oh wow, yeah, that's a coincidence. Well, wink, it's a coincidence. Nothing like that. There's not princess finding princess in this story. Although technically there is, though. Yeah, princesses in this case. So there's a character in that called Miral, who ends up with a character called Molly. At one point they end up getting married in beginning of season 2 and are transported to the Forbidden Planet, the Planet of the Fallen Ones, where they meet Viticola and his crew over there. In the future, they are transported to the Discovery season 4. They can encounter that. They don't encounter the Discovery crew, although now they have some Playmates figures. Well, they could. So I don't know if they will, but they won't in the 3rd season. There's no plans to bring Michael Burnham and Saru together in they're the figures. There's no plans to bring them in the new one, but if but yeah, they do other ones. That'd be cool. So this is we're thinking about strange worlds and strange new worlds. And I just took new out of Strange New Worlds and said Strange Worlds, so Star Trek Location is Strange World. I was not thinking of the Disney movie, but probably vaguely somewhere out there. I didn't write the Disney movie. I'm not saying that. I'm saying the idea that was in there. That pitch is very similar. Very similar. Yeah. And no, they don't do that in the Little Mermaid remake either, which I just saw. They stay straight laced in there. And now the hard right guy is like the critical drinker are upset that for some reason she's empowered and stuff, and they didn't like that. Some people were complaining about the ending in the original cartoon where Prince Eric has the ability to take the shipwreck and stab Ursula with the edge of the boat into the prow that got ripped off. But in the new version, they make Ariel do it. She hops onto the boat and she goes, and she's operating the boat, which makes more sense because they establish in the live action one that when she's a mermaid again, she actually is really strong. She has superhuman powers, kind of, because she can swim and stuff. Because she's just stronger than a human as a mermaid. So she's able to push the boat over to the Ursula. So that makes sense. Some of them are complaining, oh, that's not realistic. Oh, why would a woman do that? She's an alien fish lady. She can do that. Then again, Canary Space and Starcrackers and Space Vanguards, USV, has strong women characters from way back. Woke is silly because we were always doing that. We always had strong female characters. So, main character, Admiral Lady Arlene Benton, is heroic in the story. This one, there is a nod to her in the story. Her ancestor, her descendant, shows up at one point, who was in the other story, but she's not based on any relatives, really. It's not like a Mary Sue or anything. She's just a strong female character. So yeah, but she's not in this. There's an homage to her. There's also an homage to Cassins, because there's a different version of Cassins in there, girl version this time. So they're strong feminine characters again in the story. Star Magen, one of the heroes, he's given one of the hero guys, he's given a better role than he was in the Lost Planet story. That one he was kind of a dick, and he was kind of a weirdo. So this one he's more realistic and grounded. But yeah, so some of the characters from that other Lost Planet story are in this. You'll recognize them and go like, oh, that guy and that guy. And, oh, okay, that's just included in this one. Star Magen especially. But yeah. And Jennifer Casson, I believe. Jennifer Casson, who is sort of the Lindsay Ellis archetype character in the story. It's not really her. It's just kind of, inspired. But she's also, could be someone else. She could be the Jung Soo-won character, Talisman, as well. She's not really a Benton. She's not really, the other. It'll make sense. The characters, you don't need to know. They're fine. It's at least a year away before we film that. Wherever the studio ends up when we film it. But yeah, so here, I just wanted to go over that and the book, and it was exciting. And since it's a draft, it probably will change quite a bit before they actually film it. But the idea of a sci-fi origins of man story that isn't boring, like apparently that Foundation remake was. But apparently I didn't see it. But yeah, I don't need a gross barren guy like in Dune or a Darth Vader like in Star Wars. For this particular story, we don't need a central villain. The idea is that the humankind in the story attempt to figure things out, to rebuild themselves, and they don't have the ability to have like a Q that fixes things. They don't have, miraculous powers or anything like that. They're people, and that makes the story work, because they're not superhuman. They're just people. Another thing that was annoying about a lot of these sci-fi stories, a lot of other stories that try to force emotion or story into there by saying like, oh, the mentally challenged person for some reason has a secret superpower that makes them wonderful. They're the Wesley Crusher, Mary Sue type of thing or something. Will Wheaton's fine. I would hang out with Will Wheaton. He's perfectly fine. We're the same age, but I've never met him. Surprisingly, he hasn't done any convention. But the idea that a character, the Mary Sue type character, or there's the special one over there that has autistic like savant powers and makes him like invincible because he has powers. It's no, don't do that to people. Yeah. Data, for instance, was not technically a savant. He was a robot. He was an android. Trelane kind of was, but not Data. It's like a Q that had part of his powers broken, but early Q. And then we have but also we have all inclusion, like in our trans tech, all Transformers Mush fan films. When we include binary, non-binary, or otherwise robots before Earthspark did. So people are upset about there not being a non-binary character in a show about robots called Earthspark, which is an odd version of Transformers anyway, because the Decepticons are split up and Megatron's a good guy, and it's really weird. But not that part of it. The non-binary character works because they're robots. They don't technically have gender. It would be assigned to them if they were built that way, or they could build themselves some other way, change their voice box or something. They're robots. Now, some of them might say, no, we have gender because we're copying humans. Or we have sex because we're copying humans. But yeah, they're technically robots, and there would just be a spark inside a body shell. And yeah, so it's fine. They would be literally Transformers. It's in the title. Transformers. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's 2023. If somebody's butthurt over a non-binary robot fictional character, they need to rethink their life. Because, come on. Oh my. But yes, enough for the rant tangent. And this is an update of the channel, I guess. This would have been what we would have said at the panel on day 2 if we'd gone on a Sunday. So this would have been day 2 of the convention. It's not really, so I'm going to call it an update thing. But I'll call it an AdamaCon, maybe. Yeah, that's what I'll do. It'll be another AdamaCon of AdamaCon 4. It'll just be like a continuation. Oh.